Hey folks, and welcome to a Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we're going to be sitting down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The daily ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing. We have a Japanese film from 1989 called Tetsuo, the Iron Man, directed by Shinya Tsukamoto. We have a 2022 film called Enys Men, directed by Mark Jenkin. And finally, now in theaters, newly released Smile 2, directed by Parker Finn. So we have some spooky films here, folks. So let's bring Vincent Daly in, see what he has to say about it, and enjoy the show. Daly, how we doing over there, buddy?
Thomas, how's it going?
It's going okay on this side of the table. How was your week of movies, man?
Well, it was a rough week. I was sick this last
movies.
I know.
That's right. That's right.
Light work. Listen, I was sick last week, folks. I caught a nasty cold that only left me time for 3 movies. But the alternative title here is It Comes in Threes, going to the Italian superstition, or maybe you know it from a Soprano episode. Little did I know the scores would all be 3 points apart as well.
Oh, yeah?
So,
I bet by the third movie you were like, ooh.
yeah.
It might be 5 points apart, but I want to keep it going.
Yeah, pressured by it. So, place your bets in now, folks. What you think is going to be the range?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we could have some sort of tracking with that. But only 3, and boy, did it come in threes. These were all like very different movies, extremely different movies.
Yeah, it seems like they're different movies.
Yeah, they're really, really different. But there was something there that was just like, I just kind of feel the same about all of these in some way, that it's just like,
really?
Yeah, they all kind of, I don't know, fit into a similar area. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about them.
Yeah, but very different movies.
Yes, extremely different movies.
You didn't even bother to ask me if I watched anything this week.
I almost hope you didn't watch anything this week, because these are some weird ones. Did you watch anything this week?
I watched Tetsuo, the Iron Man.
Oh my God.
So,
oh boy,
Tetsuo, right?
Yeah, Tetsuo. Yep.
Tetsuo, the Iron Man. Shinya Tsukamoto. Yeah, I watched it. So, do you have any other opening notes?
No,
Are we jumping right in?
That's it.
Okay, so we are jumping back to 1989. Folks, real quick, just because if you tried to look at this movie, I rented it off Amazon, and I did get the 91 or 92 version, which you had warned me about, and it is the same movie.
Oh, okay.
It's the same movie, and I just had to put on subtitles myself.
Sure.
Subtitles weren't on there.
Maybe that's just for its domestic release or something.
It easily could have been.
Yeah.
I honestly, I don't know. Well, I would like to say it's the same movie. I would be shocked if it's not the same movie. Anyway, 1989, Tetsuo, the Iron Man. Again, director Shinya Tsukamoto. Vin, this movie...
I almost wish you didn't watch this movie.
But, you know what? I was going to either watch this or Enys Men. And I was like, okay, I want to watch one and surprise Vin. I'm going to watch one and surprise Vin. So then I was going to watch one, and I was just like, I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know if I feel like watching this, honestly. So I watched an episode of Tulsa King instead. Right?
Oh, okay.
Came back to it, and I said, okay, let's do it. It's an hour and 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Tetsuo the Iron Man. Hours and 7 minutes. I said, I can do this. And I was in it until I wasn't in it. But I was like, I'm just gonna hold strong. I'm gonna hold strong. I'm going to see it out.
It's barely an hour.
It's barely a movie.
Yeah.
In many ways, this movie is barely a movie. But with that, I don't know, with the scatterbrain thoughts, why don't you go ahead and tell us about Tetsuo the Iron Man?
Kind of the loose thread between all 3 films this week is that they're not your traditional horror. And that includes Smile 2 in a very interesting way.
Okay.
I would say it's been a while since I've called heads or tails on a cult hit. And this one looked to be bat shit crazy. But after Onibaba being a decent hit last week, I found the courage to dip back into my Japanese horror list one more time this year. And boy, was that maybe one dip too far.
You just had to go back to the cookie jar.
Yeah, it was too much.
Turns out there was just nails in there.
yeah. Tetsuo is a sci-fi horror series told in two parts. The first film coming out in 1989 named The Iron Man, what we're reviewing here. And the second coming out in 1992 named Body Hammer, which I don't know if I have the courage to check out after this.
Right. Tetsuo Body Hammer.
Yes.
And I think there was a third one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Like years after, I think,
okay.
if I read that properly.
Yeah. When I say the term cyberpunk, a lot of examples probably come to mind, both retro and modern. You know, your neon skylines, dystopian future, yada yada. For Japan, however, the subgenre is significantly wider in how it feels and the type of stories that are told. By the late 80s, body horror started to mix into what cyberpunk was for Japan quite a bit. And there are countless examples of this. On the anime front, for instance, whether it be the climax of classic movies like 1988's Akira, or insane shows like Genocyber, cyberpunk had been pushed to, I don't know, at least the mix with horror to really incorporate a lot of body horror elements in Japanese properties. But I would argue Tetsuo is also an example of that early shift to something darker and extremely rare as an example of doing it live action. Really, the only thing that I think would come close to this movie is maybe like a Videodrome or maybe even Eraserhead by David Lynch.
Yeah, I mean, I saw this movie being compared to big directors like that, like a Cronenberg or a Lynch. Because of the weirdness where it goes, I know this was the inspiration for the director was not Akira. Who's the director? Kurosawa?
Yes.
Yeah, Akira Kurosawa, and another famous Japanese guy, but all in the same vein. When you say cult following for this film, big cult following, just Japan really? Like it's not well known.
Hard to tell, honestly.
Okay.
Because I feel like the internet kind of puts a magnifying glass. You know, the people that are really passionate about it are going to speak louder about it.
Yes.
I can't say this is a cult following like I've commented on in the past, like Evil Dead. That's a cult following.
Okay,
you know
right.
What I mean?
Yes.
So it is definitely indie cult following. It's a little bit smaller. So. At the outset of our story, Tetsuo is your dime a dozen Japanese salaryman. Out on the town with an escort, he runs over a civilian, leaving him dead, and not to ruin his sexy time with this escort. This is also a very horny movie, which is, par for the course, I guess, for Japanese movies. Later on, we get to know this man as the metal fetishist, someone who destroys their body in pursuit of becoming a machine. Without much explanation at all, and I really mean that, like without much explanation at all, Tetsuo begins to experience nightmarish mutations that are these ever-growing technological growths on his body that match the environment and the ever-growing technological environment around him. A horrific blend of metal and flesh in the most hellish way possible until he is more metal than man and helpless to find the answers. The movie being in black and white, I would say, instantly sparked comparisons to other unhinged horrors, especially, that kind of David Lynch type of vibe.
Right.
It being also surreal, definitely helps that. Among Japanese horror influences I spoke about, in addition, that also extends to the many kind of nightmarish Silent Hill vibes this gives off. It's that rusted industrial look. Creeping into reality, or at least, kind of being, emphasized in some way there. And I think that's either where you're going to, dig the movie or bounce right off of it. It really is a cult horror in the sense that it's a coin flip of like, either you're about this or you're like really not about this. And I can only imagine.
I mean, I don't know if it's much of a coin flip because I think the vast majority of people would hate this film.
Yep.
And not be in for it. I was hanging on by a thread the entire time. I didn't turn it off or anything like that. It's only an hour and 7 minutes. I don't know. I wish I could walk away saying how much I appreciate elements of it.
Right.
It gets crazy. It gets points for being crazy and going places.
Very wild.
I will say, like the last 15 minutes, I was scratching my head. I almost paused and wanted to call you and be like, am I a fool for not getting quite what's going on or where some of these characters show up. Like, am I the idiot? And it was just like, no, I think it's a rough film.
Yeah.
It's just like, would you call Holy Mountain a coin flip? I understand what you're saying in the sense that if you do like it, you're going to love it.
Right.
And if you don't like it, you are going to hate it.
Right.
That I get. But as far this movie being a coin flip for the mass population, I just feel like I could save. Let's keep the change in your pocket.
Yeah. Don't flip it at all. That's great. I don't know. I think that's where I was trying to kind of come at this in trying to appreciate why it has a cult following at all. And I feel like these elements baked into the horror were there, but it's also like an insane movie.
And rudimentary.
Yeah, true.
I mean, it felt like some of that when we did our director's first study.
Yes.
It just felt like early movie, and it's black and white, which of course it is. I do think the black and white helped it, by the way.
Okay.
I would have preferred black and white over color, I think.
Sure.
It's just like, folks, this is a crazy film. I mean, this is not like... I don't know. I don't even know. It is art. Like, this is an artsy film.
Yeah, it's surreal and trippy and I don't know, trying to say something, but saying it in such a crazy, insane way.
I mean, yes. Yeah. To the point where it's just like, what are they trying to... Am I getting it? I feel like I get it, but do I get it? I was just getting a little bit of Pi vibes from our first film from Darren Aronofsky.
Yes.
Not only is it black and white, you have someone kind of losing their mind. You have someone going to crazy lengths. There's
kind of a weird mix of metal and technology as well, and some set work,
and some body stuff going on in that film as well. But this one takes it to the nth degree. Like, folks, if you're in, I don't know, because we're a movie podcast and we have listeners that love movies, it's almost like I really want a certain group to watch the film.
Sure.
I do have to say that because it's like, go ahead, you might as well say, just like Holy Mountain.
Yeah.
After watching it, does the importance of this film online hold up to an actual watch?
No. And honestly, I really wouldn't continue on to watch the sequel for Body Hammer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I can appreciate this film. I was definitely not hooked by this movie.
Okay.
It's go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to, were you forcing, because you made a comment, were you forcing yourself to really try to find the good elements of the film? Or were you just trying to sit there and say, I'm digging it or I'm not digging it? Like, what were your emotions through the film?
I think a little bit, just because I do try to see what people are liking, especially when I'm coming to something that I know a little bit of the reputation about.
Sure, okay.
But at the same time, for me, it was really calling the heads or tails of like, is this actually scary or is this funny? You know what I mean? And I feel like that's like the line of like all cult horror, of just like, this can be really terrifying if you're just immersed into it and being like, wow, it just moves without any kind of predictability to it. At the same time, that same kind of craziness, the extreme that it goes to, it could be watched in like a boys watch. It could be watched in almost like a so bad it's good kind of way.
Right.
So,
and the pacing of it.
Yeah.
I mean, really, because it's obviously it's a little bit lower budget. You spend a lot of time in one room, but when you're on the streets moving, you are on the streets and you're moving.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. So, while that horror itself, when it switches on, and while it switches on in a chaotic way, answers are found more so in the psyche of our character. And eventually, I don't know. I mean, they kind of give some answers. They try to make a little bit of sense, but I'm with you, Tom. I mean, there's not a lot there. I mean, I didn't even know the guy was called the Metal Fetishist until looking up, the different characters online, in the research of this.
I was confused, and I had this ready to go on the site already.
Right.
So I already went through the Wikipedia and the IMDb, and I went and I
so you knew the list.
I self-typed the description of the film.
Yeah.
So I knew what was going on. I still didn't know what was going on.
That's so great. It's so great. I would say if you can get past the true insanity the first 30 minutes bring, let alone the remaining runtime of the film, there might be something there. I would say the highlight for me was through the unique mix of like kind of industrial madness. You got these like steel production factories everywhere. The steam vents kind of coiled like snakes. There's plenty of phallic imagery as well, because once again, Japan. The special effects and gore is, I would say, where this again falls into kind of a weird spot for your cult horror. the effects themselves didn't feel too off from like an extreme version of Power Rangers, believe it or not. Like a lot of this comes from the sped up footage, but many moments I found myself wondering if like old costumes were kind of kit bashed together to make what we see is the madness in the movie.
Yeah,
like,
I'll be honest. I had Transformers. I had Power Rangers, like evil Transformers, evil Power Rangers.
Yep.
And there was another one that I can't think of now. Shit, but I'm totally with you.
yeah. There was something
It
there.
is a Transformers movie. I mean,
yeah,
in its own way.
Absolutely. It's just like it made me wonder, like, did this production just have like an old warehouse of Power Ranger villains, like the dress up costumes, and they were just like, let's grab this.
It wasn't
let's grab
that
this.
close.
Let's spray paint it all. It's chrome, you know.
It was not that close. I mean, I will say, what impressed me the most basically was the practical effects of the guy's body changing and morphing
true.
and things like that actually was pretty good.
Yeah.
That's right. I was getting like xenomorph vibes a little bit.
Oh, sure.
With Alien.
Absolutely.
And just the terror and everything that it brings.
Yeah.
But, not that we're grasping at straws, but, there's the elements are there.
That's what I think I was able to appreciate about it. But seriously, though, folks, the movie is absolute chaos. And it's a real tough decision of where it falls. I debated a lot of where this falls. On one hand, it's so unpredictable that I personally, I don't know, maybe it was the fog I was in, watching these sick or whatnot, Talk about watching this and especially the next one on any sort of cough syrup. I mean, that's a trip in itself. I feel like there is a line, though, that I couldn't help but be a little bit scared of what messed up thing would unfold next. It was so unpredictable that I really didn't have a grasp of what's going to happen to this guy.
Yeah, very true, very true.
Especially any kind of the new body horror additions to Tetsuo's body. I think that's where this did actually have some meat to its horror. But on the other hand, again, I found myself wondering if the film gets so crazy that you actually start to laugh at it. Like, it's so distinctly Japanese in its feel. It's so distinctly anime in its feel as well at some points. It doesn't really help this factor, this comedic factor almost. And there's more than a few scenes that tip those scares into silly. But once again, I suppose that is the line any cult horror dances on. We're going to go ahead and give Tetsuo, the Iron Man, 1989.
Oh boy.
Again, I don't even know, 56.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that honestly might be generous. I think this could easily be a 46 on the other side of the coin.
Yes.
But I think
it could be a 26.
Yeah.
If you're sitting on the other edge of the tape, maybe it's just a seat that I'm in.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
I mean, this is a little bit more up your alley.
I think I want a Tommy Two Shoes, though, because I agree there is...
I wasn't going to give a Tommy Two Shoes.
I think your perspective as a non-horror fan, it's a good definition point. We got to define... What's good?
I mean, I walked. The movie ended, and I didn't feel like my life was enhanced at all by seeing it again. And I said to myself, if this film never existed, how would my feelings of cinema be? And they would be unchanged. And it's just like I didn't get much from it.
Yeah.
And from the point of it's so crazy that it's enjoyable, or might be, it was so crazy that it wasn't. I'm not going to say it was enjoyable for me.
Sure.
But it was...
You weren't bored by it.
Exactly. Thank you for putting the words... Yes. Because it's just like, it's crazy. I mean, at what part... When you go so crazy...
Yep.
I need there to be a fine balance and a vision of a director where it's the craziness... only goes so far and happens in a way where it's almost genius. And there's a lot of crazy stuff that can happen in films that I feel that way.
Sure.
Sometimes I also feel like if you just sat down and say, let's go crazy, or let's go crazy, or let's go... If the point is just to be as crazy as hell, I don't know if there's as much talent or the craft of art in there.
Okay.
Because, again, the story, we were both struggling with the story.
Oh, yeah.
So something still wasn't coming through. You were just trying to be as crazy as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And with that, I was more so watching it as a comedic thing. 100%.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
but I don't know what that
parts,
says about it. Is it up its own ass a little bit? Does that make sense?
I don't know. I agree with what you mean. I mean, I don't know if it's up its own ass. I could get where you're coming from with its black and white feel of it. But I don't think it's up its own ass because I think some parts... I don't know, it's meant to be silly in a way that Japanese media is silly. Like I referenced in the Onibaba review, I was kind of nervous to go back to this list because House or Houseu was such a weird mix of campy and horror that's what I was going for, but clearly just not my bag. Once again, I feel like I'm getting a little burned a little bit going back to this list because this is exactly what that is. It's a mix of like campy and now very extreme horror. That I just, again, I'm just very torn on it. It hits the puddle because I don't know what to really think about. The puddle
of 56.
Yeah.
Can't quite call it good, but you're not going to go sit there and say it's bad.
Exactly. And I feel like I could make a case for, I don't know, a cult horror fanatic that has seen everything. This is a shock that if you haven't seen it, it's like, whoa. I mean, like, you know, there is something new out there. You know what I mean?
You know what? I like that, Vin. Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not surprised by your 56.
Okay,
it's just not my score because I mean, I'm just not in that world.
Yeah, absolutely. And
which is why I knew you would be shocked that I watched it.
I really was. And again, a tinge of regret. This is not the type of horror I want to like introduce you to. You know, this was scraping the list. I mean, honestly, Tommy Flip Flop, go in on it. Tear it apart.
Okay, so remember that there are no zero shoes anymore.
Yes.
The lowest score you can possibly get is a Tommy Flip Flop these days.
Yep.
So this gets a Tommy Flip Flop.
Yeah. I was thinking about that. That's about right.
Okay, Flip Flop. There you go.
There we go.
What would you rather watch again? I'm not going to ask the question. Okay. Let's just keep things moving.
Yeah.
Taking a big old jump to the year 2022. I think it kind of came out in 2022. That's the official date. And then I think it actually hit some theaters.
Yes.
Not even in the States in 2023.
Yeah.
But regardless, because it's a smaller time horror. This is called Enys Men, two words. Enys Men. Men. It's an hour and 36 minutes. This is kind of billed as a fantasy, horror, mystery. And this director, Mark Jenkin. Tell us a little bit about Mark Jenkin or why this film, and then get into it.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't have too much history with Mark Jenkin. He does a lot of like super, super indie stuff. Originally, this was actually supposed to be on a podcast episode, but had 0 theaters showing it near me.
Is that right?
Yeah. And kind of will be, unfortunately, a growing list each year we do the show. A perfect example of Anora supposed to be in this week, but is like shown in 2 theaters at a time, on opposite sides of the states.
Yeah.
So
it's
unreal. Yeah. But this was one that in 2023, I think like around like March or something, I kind of did plan to cover it.
Okay.
But nowhere in sight.
And real quick, this guy, so Mark Jenkin, director, he did a movie in 2019, in actually a documentary in 2019 called Bait.
Okay.
And I remember seeing it on lists as far as like great documentaries, yada yada. So when I was going through his stuff and saw this, it's really highly rated. And you might be psyched to it's a different kind of documentary, but
interesting.
Maybe one to add to the list. Honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that if there's any type of failure from the juggling act of this year is not getting to more documentaries when I definitely wanted to get to more documentaries. Wow. But yeah, the weeks move on. Horror-wise, this did look to be pulling from a very surreal type of European feel, possibly influenced from Italian horror of the 70s. After release, it received a fair amount of praise online, especially using its bleak landscape to kind of cast a purgatory-like atmosphere on the film. However, I didn't expect how minimalist the story would be, and in turn made an experience that was very visually striking, for sure. It's a well-shot film, it's a good-looking film, but left me scrambling for answers without many breadcrumbs to even pick up on. Enys Men is probably best described as an experimental horror that is equal parts psychological and surreal. The title translates to Stone Island in Cornish. I actually kind of wish I knew it was called Stone Island because there is one small element here connected to a stone on the island that, I don't know, was something that I looked over originally, but kind of has some substance now that I realize that is kind of the focus of the story. At the outset, we follow some sort of researcher assigned to taking care of an island in the 1970s, waiting for the next supply ship as her resources dwindle. Throughout the story, we see a simple routine of checking on this Irish-looking landscape and recording some notes about the island. But suspiciously, very little changes, almost kind of frozen in time. In this repetition, we start to notice many different types of hallucinations as the experience forces you to question what is real and what is in her head. But little by little, we begin to piece together a larger mystery connected to the island, even if no more than a few pages of words are spoken in the entire film. I didn't really want to compare this, but I feel like it would be useful. This is somewhere on the scale or the scope or the spectrum of Skinamarink, where it's like it is so minimal.
Really? That minimal?
Yeah, there's a lot of visual storytelling here, and this is a much better shot film.
Okay. I thought you were going to say Lamb from A24.
Yeah, that was pretty minimal too. That was
And you actually get outside in that film.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
But anyway,
Maybe a combination of the both.
Okay. If anybody listening even remembers those films, Skinamarink and Lamb,
Yeah.
quiet films, and not a lot happens.
Yes.
And with where you're at, if she's off the Cornish coast or whatever like that, it's a remote place kind of. Yeah.
Yes. I think I would have enjoyed some survival elements here, embellished a little, or kind of made to be more prominent for our character. I would have enjoyed a little bit more insight as far as some dialogue, especially when we finally get some human life to interact with. But it is very, very minimal. And I say that just as kind of a warning because it's extremely artsy. There's a lot to love as far as the visual storytelling here and how it looks, but I was kind of grasping at straws.
Really? It was that light?
Yeah, it was that light. And puts so much out there to, like, it's definitely saying something, about what is going on this island or these hallucinations that she has. So,
this film, correct, it was filmed on old...
Yes,
cameras like
16 millimeter.
Right, so it looks like a film coming out of the 70s almost.
Yes,
right?
It looks like a home movie almost.
Okay, all right,
which is interesting.
It's something different.
Yeah. Folks, though, it's very atmospheric. It's very art house. But I would find I really almost constantly was finding myself questioning how scary the film actually was. Because the pieces of the story are minimalistic to an extreme, watching the film came off more as, I'm going to be honest, kind of more tranquil, almost meditative to me.
Wow.
Again, maybe the cough syrup was bleeding in. But it really was
what choice of cough syrup? Have you moved on from Robitussin, or are you still on Robitussin?
Still on Robitussin.
Okay.
Old school.
Yeah.
It's not a terrible quality because the film is beautiful on this 16 millimeter. There is a kind of a color bleeding that happens. Very, very intentional coloring. Her sweater being one piece there. But I think the horror was just totally lost on me in between the scrambling search for answers in the story and... Again, really hard to find any real substance there.
And you're looking for answers along with the main character, correct?
Yeah.
You're supposed to be kind of on that journey together?
Absolutely. She's definitely in like a dreamlike state, just in the repetition of her going to each of 5 total points of the island and taking notes and seeing that nothing's really changing. But we as the audience know there is stuff's changing because you see different hallucinations in the background that she's barely reacting to.
Right, okay.
So it's like, why isn't she reacting to this? Why is she reacting to some? And what's the thread in between them? So I think one area this, pulled it off well was in the repetition of checking on the island. Believe me, I completely understand how in these segments it could really bore the audience to tears. It really, really could just be a snoozer. But the advantage of having these repeat shots is allowing you to notice the small changes as they build into more disturbing visions, more unsettling visions. For instance, like I said, we know our character is the only one on the island. Seeing a mysterious figure show up made me question, not only the sanity of who we follow, but if there was a greater purpose to the island itself, if that was a real person. So there are elements there that are hooking you as you watch it, but by the end, it's just like, oh, and there's no answers.
Right, okay.
And that's kind of where I settle on the film. Folks, earlier in the podcast, I might have been self-conscious to admit this in a review, but I am fully comfortable saying I didn't really understand all of this. And more importantly, a single watch might not be enough to pick up on every detail baked into this. So much of the experience is absorbing the atmosphere of Stone Island, and I personally think I was a bit too focused on finding answers for my review that it actually hurt my watching experience a little bit with it. Overall, I would say this is still a recommendation, but one to sit with and soak in every drop of the aesthetic, because like some of the minimalist horror we've seen come about in the last 2 years or so, it is all about the vibes first. We're going to go ahead and give Enys Men 2022 a 57.
Okay, a 57. I wonder what Smile 2 is going to get.
Yeah, is it up? Is it down?
Okay, a 57%. Again, but just hearing the way you're talking about it, I'm a little bit shocked that it got above a 50%.
Yeah.
There was enough art and enough stylistic there, or stylized imagery there,
Yes,
that I feel like that's what was kind of keeping you in, holding you in a bit.
Absolutely.
And this, what's up with the island, this lost aspect to it.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's also this element of like, I'm not asking questions for no reason. I feel like there's a difference between something having a hook and I want to know the answers to just being apathetic about like, all right, who cares?
Right.
There was something here that I wanted to know what was up. It's just that its focus is not on giving answers. It's not on giving substance. It's about kind of just creating this atmosphere and a little bit of dread to it. Not a lot of dread because, again, like I said, not the scariest horror. Not really a horror at all.
Just
really.
mysterious question marks.
Yes.
Yeah, that might be
creepy. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Off-putting at times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right, Vince. So 57% for Enys Men. Enys. Enys Men. Okay, so before we get on to Smile 2, we just want to remind people that did we get a note from Max from last week or no?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Just Producer Max, if you want to write in a note, again, feel free to write a note if you want, from last week. Just want to remind people that Vin and I are going off the value for value model and that the daily ratings is completely producer supported. So basically, Vin and I, we're not going to have any advertising here on the podcast or the website. We're not going to have any paywalls or tier structures either to access any of our content. Everything that we do is out there. You can technically listen and absorb it for free. But the thing is, if you are enjoying it, and if you're coming back week after week or stopping in when there's a movie that you care about and listening to the podcast, if you're checking it on the website, before you watch a movie or wondering if something's worth a watch, we look at that as value in your pocket. So we ask, can you send us value back in our pocket? Value for value. So you go to thedailyratings.com and go to the donations tab. And through your monetary support, you become an actual, legitimate producer of the Daily Ratings. Because just like in Hollywood, when you financially support a project, you're a producer of the project. And that's what the Daily Ratings is. It's one massive project here. We have a blast doing it every week. And we know that we have some great listeners out there and people who really love it. So don't be afraid to send some value our way. Again, it's at dailyratings.com and head to the donations tab. There's set donations if you want. You can go through PayPal or debit or credit. You can go through Venmo or even Satoshis if you're into that. All different kinds of ways to donate if you want. You can send it in. And another thing with value for value too, it's not like a Patreon where there's set prices. We do have some buy Vin a movie ticket or Gump Club, whatever. But there's a big value for value button there because it's whatever amount of value you want or just this week or what you have to give. We appreciate every amount, big or small. Everyone's got their own finances. Everyone's finances are different week to week, and we just kind of want to respect that. So whether it's $5 or $500, we can't tell you how much we appreciate it. We appreciate you sending that in, the engagement. And of course, when you donate, when you're a producer, send in a producer note. So you can email us at tom.vin@thedailyratings.com. You email us there, and that could be questions, comments, critiques. It could be suggestions. It could be an Ask Us Anything. It doesn't have to be about movies. Or if you just have something you want to say, a statement to be made, make your statement. If you're a producer, we care about what you want to say, and we'll read your note here at the producer segment. So that's kind of how we're doing it here if you're new to the show. And if you're not new to the show and you've been around, you know what the deal is. DailyRatings.com, head to the donations tab. And next week, we're actually going to have a special. Mm-hmm. So we won't be doing producer segments. So if anyone that donates within the next week, that'll be for the show after, for episode 159. Because next week, episode 158, we actually have a great Halloween special coming out. So stay tuned for that.
Oh, yeah.
With that, Vin, let's jump to the newest movie here, the one in theaters. It's Smile 2. I don't think you were pumped for this film. We've been doing this long enough now where we covered Smile 1 on the podcast, which is cool. But basically, we're back in action. It was the biggest movie of the weekend.
Okay.
So why don't you set it up a little bit? How was Smile 2?
Well, folks, against all of my desires to cover what I wanted to watch this week, which, once again, that was a Nora from Sean Baker, hopefully something that I can get to later on in the year, I have had to face with round 2 with a franchise that I really didn't care for. Smile 2022 was something we covered already on the podcast, getting a whopping 49%.
Yeah.
And something I dislike
cheeky
so
score.
Yeah, very cheeky score. Something I dislike so much as well that I actually covered It Follows in the same episode out of spite. Direct comparison for the horror setup they shared. However, like I commented on in a previous episode, for a sequel premise, I thought this had some real teeth. Mixing your stalking, smiling curse with a celebrity main character creates an interesting dynamic around the sea of faces she will have to confront. Combine that with the huge amount of parasocial discussion being done online around fame and fandoms, Taylor Swift, Chappell Ronan, all of this discussion online. That's some killer timing, and that's what we call striking while the iron is hot. I feel like this is posed to do good in the box office because it captures so many, not themes, but building moments online, especially around how celebrities are seen and how rabid fandoms have become.
Yeah, there is something going on with the whole pop star icon thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we have it with Trap.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
Shyamalan's daughter.
Yeah,
There's something going on here, big time.
Yeah, there's something as far as the aesthetic of mega celebrity and capitalizing that on horror.
Yeah, definitely.
So I thought as a premise to the sequel, I thought like that was a smart writer's room decision. They sit down, who do we have? What can we do for a sequel to this? Who looks at faces? Celebrities. Who's on stage? Who has to see a sea of faces?
No matter where they go.
Yeah.
That's actually a very good premise.
Yeah.
Because I do think, that's a good point to make, Vin. Sitting around the writer's room and saying, what do we do for Smile 2
Exactly.
here? Because the first one, if people don't remember, when Smile 1 came out, it was a bit of a thing. And the reason why was the marketing for the film was really good. And all the smile posters and just random smiling things. Like it had a heavy market campaign that wasn't average, like an average normal campaign.
Yep.
And some guerrilla marketing, and I thought it had some buzz around it.
Yeah. And similarly, they're doing the same thing here. Like in Times Square, they had the people posing in windows and smiling and whatnot.
But it's a thing of, now that you've seen one, you do got to mix it up for two.
Absolutely.
The hook no longer is what is this film.
Yeah.
We know the hook, so give us something else.
Absolutely. Smile 2 separates itself from the first movie in the initial tone of its horror. Both, of course, work off paranoia, but this was trippy and droning in a way that the first wasn't. And I was excited to see, but as will be the theme with this review, good in the first half, dwindles in the second half. Drug addiction, trauma, and an isolating level of fame, Sky Riley is a tragic pop star just starting to get back on the saddle, who is played by Naomi Scott. Naomi Scott, not too familiar with her. Apparently she was Jasmine in the Aladdin live action, and a few other things.
Well, she was one of the angels in the Charlie's Angels reboot
really?
with Kristen Stewart. Yeah.
You wanna give some insight into that?
I've seen the movie. I bought it on Amazon, but is it a good movie? Absolutely not. It's absolute trash.
That's great. In a moment of weakness, she relapses, putting her in the path of the cursed smile, once again causing inexplicable visions of smiling weirdos around her. On top of the already dissociating experience of fame, disturbing hallucinations start to fill Sky's day-to-day life with a smile that cannot be forgotten. And before you know it, the clock is ticking on how much time she has left until the smile feeds on her fear entirely. The biggest black eye on this film is just the writing, which is a shame because otherwise I would say it's starting off pretty decent. All comes down to how exposition is given about Sky. Dialogue around her is just super, super clumsy with how it kind of gets us up to speed on her celebrity life, where honestly, no shorthand at all would have probably worked. Like, she's a celebrity. It's not
Right.
rocket science.
So it's trying to tell you too much.
Yeah,
a little ham-fisted.
Exactly. The worst offender of this is no doubt her mom, giving just a constant barrage of facts that should obviously be known not only from like her manager position of her pop star career, but obviously should be known because she's her goddamn mother. And I have a bone to pick with this mother character because she was just so genuinely like a piece of shit as well, like a really like horrible character that I was just like, man, this is just bad in every way possible.
Is anybody notably player?
Yes.
Is this Rosemary DeWitt?
Yes.
Yeah.
Apparently she was in La La Land. I don't know. I did some brief research, but yeah, not great. Beyond that, however, I would say there's a fair amount of highlights in the film that I was surprised to see. We get some time with rising star Kyle Gallner, who was in the first film and was in the ever-growing hit now of Strange Darling.
Yep, which we covered a few weeks ago.
Yeah, that has only gained further and further momentum online. This intro with him was by far the best part of the movie and connects the two films in a much more direct way than I expected. In the first film, I don't know if it was exactly 7 days, but there's like a week timeline that is set up. The rules of the curse, basically. The rules of the monster, to stick with, daily ratings terminology.
Yeah.
That is softened a little bit here, but we get a lot more insight into the chain link of the curse, and I thought that was an interesting element. Like any horror sequel, the mythos of the smile is able to be built up upon to give us more insight to how it works, and I thought this was handled in a pretty smart way. Sometimes kind of blurring the existing information to switch things up for the scare. Other times, doing the typical kind of giving us more and more information about how the curse works and what exactly it entails then, which undoubtedly, I'll say right now, this is fresh in mind for a special next week that is going to be focusing on big horror franchises. This is lining up big. This is, trying to knock it out of the park as far as being probably, 3 more sequels after this.
Oh, no, really?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, the premise can go far.
Exactly. And that's where, I don't know, I think it is a highlight of the film because it's like, they're opening it up a little bit more. There's going to be more opportunity, even more opportunity.
Isn't that terrible? Don't we hate that?
I definitely hate it in pretty much every instance, but I feel like it's just such a reality for horror franchises.
It's such a horror thing.
Yeah.
It is such a horror. So we might have Smile 10, and you might be like, well, 3 of them are really good.
Right.
Right? Okay.
Yeah. Or 3 of them, kind of get the job done.
Yeah.
I mean, you flash back to that first review, and I think my bone to pick was that it was failing at what It Follows did so well. I think where it's a slight highlight here is that by building all these new rules and giving us, insight into the curse itself, it's making its own thing.
You're expanding the universe.
Yeah, it's not just someone's following you constantly. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
So it becomes a little bit more distinct as a franchise, but, the business decision behind the scenes is to open up for, sequels upon sequels. So, I guess every decade has to have one, 2000s was Saw, 2010s was Conjuring, I guess 2020s is Smile.
Yeah,
so.
There's also 10 others.
Yeah.
I mean, who's the one guy that we can't stand that we did? The Red Door and The Key.
Oh, James Wan.
Yeah. Well, but what are those movies called?
Oh, Insidious.
Insidious. There's 5 of those.
Yeah.
There's so many of them.
There really is. To my delight, though, there was a lot more focus, at least in the first half, on gore and really crazy kills. I'm not a huge fan of, the Final Destination franchise. You remember those?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it did kind of feel like it was blending a little bit of that stylistically now as well, where it's like, whoa, you don't know how crazy these kills are going to get.
Right, of course.
And it felt like the first film just took a lot of time to get to the same spot that in this film it starts out at. It starts out at that level. The first 2 we get are really excellent and had me thinking that this was honestly 10 times better than the original. For fans of the first, I will say they also give a handful of glances at what we'll call the true terror of the curse, the smiling curse, which was really handled great. But it really is bittersweet, folks, because sadly at some point, I don't know exactly when, but some point even the trippy and the droning feel of the earlier parts of the film that kind of was trying to communicate this isolating level of fame, at some point it just goes away and they use those same old jump scares I had issue with before. It really felt like as the movie went on, they felt like they needed that crutch of quick edits and stings in the music to give a scare of regardless of what was on screen. And I was just like, man, you had something good going.
And you cheapened it.
Yeah. It felt like the film was not confident in its final execution, or at maybe worse, this was something done in the editing stage of like, we need to punch this up as the film is ramping up a little bit. For all the moody atmosphere of the first half, all the building dread, the second half completely boils down to jump scares every 15 minutes like clockwork. And I was just like, oh man, this is still just the first one, which was disappointing. Folks, Smile 2 was, I would say, much sharper in its hook, and hopefully, even in kind of, describing how it pairs the curse with a main character that forces social interaction and kind of twists the experience of fame into horror. Hopefully that does kind of create an interest in the film, because I think the film is worth watching, but it still fails to deliver on that elevated premise, because despite how electric the combination of plot beats are, for every moment that I thought was inspired, we get the same matching scene of that jump scare crutch brought out anytime pacing dips a bit to be a bit too slow. And because of this, I felt both surprised and disappointed with a movie I really just never intended to watch. We're going to go ahead and give Smile 2 a 58.
Okay, at 58, it was the best of the... we never had a show like this.
Yeah. I don't know.
So we got 56, 57,
Maybe
58.
I just got to take the week off next time.
Oh boy.
I really do feel the way I do about
it's better
these
than the
films.
first one.
Yeah, it's better than the first one by a good margin.
Well,
Maybe by hair.
Well,
Yeah, I guess it's not in the 60s.
It's a big jump because it's above 50%.
Yes.
But it's a 9% change.
Yeah, exactly. Single digits.
Was the music a step up? How was the composer?
Composer was actually kind of interesting.
He did the same for the first one, but this poppy feel affect the music.
I feel like it's had the same problem as Trap, where like these fake pop songs, I don't know, they get the job done, but are they like really great?
Okay.
I'm not looking for a real pop song in these type of moments, but it also has to sell me on the world. It has to sell me on the fantasy of this being actually, a successful pop star,
Yeah, I just kind of thought that maybe throughout the film it would be a faster paced film with kind of better fast paced music that helps it move along. I don't know why I don't know why I would think that for this film, but it's just kind of what I had in the back of my head.
Yeah, if anything, it really takes its time in that first half. And again, that's what I thought was working great. There is a lot of muted moments, which I would say goes into the sound design and possibly the composition there. He has like a 5-word name. It's something I don't know. I didn't even write it down. Yeah.
Yes. I just had it, and I'm away from it now.
But there's moments that are like intentionally muted, where it's just supposed to be like, again, it's trying to communicate that she's a pop star, but before this curse ever stumbles across her, she's at odds with fame. I mean, again, I thought that was an interesting kind of spin. She doesn't really want the fame, or she feels disassociated with it. I think the music could have, I don't know. I when I see these movies using pop stars and mega fame as their centerpiece, it almost brings in a requirement that I need them to sell me on that. Oh yeah, they're a pop star. Where here it's like in the production and the scale of the movie, you get one concert sequence that has a lot of people in it, but it's just like it also feels too small. Like
that makes sense. Yeah,
Sky Riley in this is supposed to be like the largest pop star imaginable, and it's like, I don't know if the extras, if like the production itself sells me on that.
Yeah, well, that's a very good point to an element in a film like that, because I guess that you need to feel the meganess of the person. Yeah, to actually for buy-in. Basically,
absolutely.
Only other note too, Parker Finn, our director here, also directed the first one.
Yes,
so we'll see if he stays attached if this is expanding into more films.
Sure.
And then also how. Oh, and I think that's it actually. Basically. Yeah, okay, so Smile 2, 58%. Again, it's episode 53 if you want to go back to Smile 1, and we did cover a movie called Talk to Me, which Vin was pretty hot on.
Oh, no, It Follows.
Oh, It Follows, sorry.
Yes.
Oh, which you're very hot on.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Oh, talking about great music. That's Trent Reznor, correct?
No, that's Disaster Piece.
Okay.
Close. Listen. You
Hanging on by a thread, even.
You keep the mics on. You know, you're paying attention. I know where you were coming from. That is still my recommendation. Ultimately, if you like the Smile franchise, no problem there. Watch It Follows, though. I feel like It Follows has so much of what works about this premise without just like needless and almost subtracting jump scares from what it really has going on with it.
Okay. I think those are some great notes there, V. Anything you want to add? Anything you want to touch on with these very...
brief episode.
Brief episode, but also just like 56, 57, 58. I mean, it's just that doesn't happen with us.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
Yeah, I if anything, one thing with Smile 2, I'm actually surprised. I kind of expected people to be very hot on this because of those elements that it was kind of baking into its formula around like celebrities and whatnot, because it does have a good elevator pitch to it. I didn't have the chance to look at other reviews, but people aren't really too hot on Smile 2.
No,
it's sitting somewhere like mid-60s on a lot of things.
Oh, really?
So.
I mean, Smile 1 wasn't like a crazy success. I forget what was considered some of the best horror last year or in the year 2022, because there was a lot of it coming out.
Sure.
Like I said, it was number one at the box office. The Wild Robot is still doing okay.
Joker's plummeted.
Joker's out of top 5.
Yeah.
Joker is
Straight up
really,
knocked
really
out.
bad. And then I think that, what's its face? Megalopolis is like out.
Oh, wow.
Just about in theaters. I think,
Yeah.
it's in 75 theaters only.
Yeah.
Anyway, so with that, Finn, we've got a big week next week.
Yes,
folks.
we do.
Shorter episode this week, long episode next week. We've got a great Halloween special, something that we would have been wanting to do for a while, actually. And Vince, it's been on Vin's list to do, and I just love that the films that we're covering were actually all open.
Yeah.
Meaning we haven't done them before.
Yeah, absolutely.
That I find kind of cool.
Absolutely.
So we've got a great slate of 5 films next week. Please tune in to our Halloween special. And then after that, of course, just continuing on with some new films that are coming out. So, Vin, thank you so much for watching these. Thanks for stopping by here tonight. Folks at home, we'll run it down one more time. We have Tetsuo, the Iron Man, with a 56% and a Tommy flip-flop. We have Enys Men with a 57%. And Smile 2 with a 58%. 56, 7, and 8. It's always a great time. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next week for a daily rating special right here on the Daily Ratings Podcast. And hey, if you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating or get the word out and tell a friend about us. Just a reminder that Daily Ratings is completely producer supported. We want to stay away from advertising, and we don't want to have any paywalls or tier structures or subscriptions. It's all just value for value. So, are you finding value in any of the things that we're doing here at the Daily Ratings? Then become a producer and donate whatever amount of value that is. Just go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com. And while you're there, be sure to check out the massive amount of films that Vince has rated. So thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you next week on the Daily Ratings Podcast.